As I walked out of the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, and down the ramp, I looked at my mom with sadness and embarrassment, never wanting to return to that dreadful place. I slowly dragged my feet back to the car. I wanted to curl up in a little ball, and I didn't want anyone else to know what I had done. I finally got into the car. I didn't even want to hear what my mom had to say. I was trying to hide my face in the palms of my hands because I knew what was about to come. She was going to start asking me questions, all of the questions I had been asking myself. Sure enough, after a short period of being in the car, the questions began. Honey, how could we have miscalculated 6 months? My frustrated reply to every question was, I don't know. Maybe this was a sign I was going to fail. I could only imagine how my brother and sister were going to make me feel. They had teased me about studying so hard for the permit test. Now here I was, not actually failing the driver's test, but failing to go on the correct day. Exactly 1 month later, all of the fears that happened in the past were returning. Was I going to fail? Was I going to get the same strict instructor? As I slid out of the car and slowly shut the door, I could only hope that the same person wouldn't be there when I last attempted to take the driver's test. With that thought running through my head, my brain was in overdrive. All the wheels were turning as fast as they possibly could. I tried to zone out the negative stories I had heard by telling myself, I can do this. I just drove through town on a practice run, and I did very well. Of course, the fear of failure kept popping in my head, and I couldn't stop it. Slowly, I made my way to the entrance of the DMV. As I reached for the door, I let out a sigh of worry. I walked down the stairs, trying to stall as long as possible. All that I could picture was the instructor with mean eyes. I could just imagine his evil laugh when he failed me. Walking through the completely white hallway with only signs to guide me to the right place, I read every sign, hoping that the one that read driver's license would be closed. The hallway seemed like it was a mile long, and I knew that we were approaching the last few doors, one of which would say the two most horrifying words. I looked down at the ground. When I looked up, I was the welcome sign. Peeking around the corner, I hoped that the evil instructor would be out for the day. What luck! I was standing face to face with the same instructor that I had heard so many terrifying stories about. With fearful thoughts in my mind, I didn't know what to do. I tried making myself comfortable in the seats that were lined up against the wall. I was swaying back and forth, so it was obvious I was nervous. My mother had told me on the way down not to let him know I was nervous, because then he would think that I was not ready for the test. Well, it was too late. I knew I was too nervous. I waited in the long line. It was full of people ahead of me. I wanted the line to be shorter. The room seemed to be spinning. Finally, I realized that I was making the situation 10 times worse than it really was, and I was ready to finish the test. The instructor and I went to the car. After testing the turning signals, the instructor was ready to begin the test. I pulled out of the parking lot and was told to make a right turn. For a second, I couldn't remember which way was left and which way was right. I formed both my index fingers and my thumbs into the shape of an L, hoping this would point me in the right direction. I came to the first stop sign. I spelled out the word stop, S-T-O-P. My sister said that this was the best way to know that you have made a complete stop, something that a number of people had failed the test for in the past. Making a left turn, we were making our way into town where the traffic signals were. The instructor instructed me to make another left turn. There was a car in front of me, so I figured that I was safe to do what the car ahead of me was doing. I followed the car into the right lane. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the instructor writing on his blank piece of paper. Right then, I knew that I had done something wrong. After driving for a long time, we headed back to the DMV. I parked the car and removed the keys from the ignition. While stepping out of the car, I looked at the paper that he had been taking notes on and noticed that the blank piece of paper was no longer blank. With barely an inch to spare at the bottom of the paper, the instructor began explaining to me all the things I had done wrong. I felt like a 2-year-old child because of all the drawings he had made, explaining every little mistake. I was sad as I walked behind the instructor back to the office. I knew my mom was going to ask me if I passed. "Did you pass?" asked Mom. I shrugged my shoulders, hoping the instructor would answer her question. His reply was the same as mine, a shoulder shrug. Right then, I wanted to break down and cry. I sat in the chair, just as embarrassed as the time when I came in on the wrong day. I knew that I couldn't return to that dreadful place a third time. Then, when I thought things couldn't go any worse, the instructor asked me to stand in front of the blue screen and get my picture. I thought that this picture was for the wall of shame. He printed out the picture and said, "Drive carefully." I was speechless. Now, as I walked down the ramp, I looked at my mom in excitement and relief. I was so proud of myself for going back and facing my fear of that dreadful place. I now know that if I believe in myself, I can do anything. This is a reading taken from a website, 123helpme.com, and I'll post the link in the box below. This will help my students with pronunciation, listening comprehension, and reading comprehension. I hope it helps you too.